Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I will be sharing a chess game that Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, the #2 ranked player in the world, played against, effectively, Stockfish, the most powerful chess computer in the world. And he survived. And as a bonus, I'm also going to be showing you another game of chess. We'll be looking at two games. Here we go. For these two games, we have to go to St. Louis, Missouri, United States of America. This is the American Cup. And quite fittingly, two of the top Americans are going at it. Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. And for the second game, the same players, just we reverse the colors. For this first game, Fabiano Caruana uncorked savagery on the chessboard. He came to this game with vicious opening preparations and very, very, very bad intentions for Hikaru. On that note, let's proceed. Also, for some reason, I don't have highlight moves on. Now I do. Pawn to e4. Pawn to e5. Knight f3, knight c6. This is Hikaru's pet opening with the black pieces in classical chess. Classical chess, format of chess where both players have a lot of time on the clock. Bishop c4, it's quite fitting that an Italian plays the Italian. Knight f6. Many of you might be looking at this position. You like the move knight g5. Very good move at beginner and intermediate as well, but these guys know what they're doing. So instead, we have d3 from Fabiano, and Hikaru plays this move bishop to e7. The most common move in this position is bishop to c5 by black, but he plays bishop e7. This is actually a move that was played quite a lot by none other than Grandmaster Daniil Dubov in his match against Hans Niemann. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Daniil Dubov and Hans Niemann met up in a random building in Moscow, and they played 18 games of blitz against each other, and the loser of that match promised to take a polygraph test, a lie detector test. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. If you don't know about that, that's something you can look up after this video. Now, here, Fabiano chooses a very non-conventional way to play this game. And you may be sitting there wondering, Levy, you said Stockfish, what about Fabiano? Keep in mind, Fabiano Caruana knew everything. He did not think in this game until much, 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 much later. Fabiano Caruana prepared an opening idea backed by Stockfish. Hikaru was playing Stockfish for the first half of this game. Knight c3. That's not the normal move. Normally, they play c3 and try to play for d4. So we have knight c3, d6, and now Fabi plays a3. This is not something that has been seen before. Notice how he is not castling. He has something very, very sinister in mind. For example, if black plays the very natural bishop to g4, white will attack this, and if the bishop goes here, Fabiano is going to go g4. This is the opening idea. He's not going to castle. And then he could play rook g1, h4, g5. Fabi has engine-back prep, so castles by Hikaru. Bishop e3. Hikaru plays bishop e6, offering to trade the bishops. Fabi puts the knight on d5. Very difficult position for black already. This bishop is going to drop back. The pawns will come forward, right? Can't take because that's a fork. And now Hikaru plays bishop d7. So he plays bishop e6, bishop d7. And Fabiano Caruana here plays h4. Now, I would like to draw your attention to something, provided you are still watching and haven't clicked away from this video, which would be insane, because if your attention span is so bad you can't even watch a video for 4 minutes, that would be really, really tragic. Fabiano Caruana just thought for 22 minutes. Okay? Now, if you're thinking 22 minutes in a chess game, that means that you haven't memorized something, right? Wrong. In fact, the fact that Fabi was thinking for that long made Hikaru nervous. Because Hikaru then went on to say, Fabiano Caruana is so well prepared, it is sometimes a bad sign. You are making him think so early into the opening. Why? Because it means you played a bad move. It means that Fabiano memorized all the best moves. He already memorized all the moves that Stockfish would play here, like queen d7, bishop d5. The fact that Hikaru went for this means Fabi knows to punish it. He thought for 20 minutes, and the most insane thing about the move h4 is it's one of the best moves in the position. The move h4 is played in literally 0 Italian games. I have never in my life seen an Italian opening with the move h4. You can check a database. Like, it does not happen. White maneuvers and slowly attacks. H4 in Italian is unseen. Hikaru is playing Stockfish. That's what's going on here. Fabiano is not going to castle. Now Hikaru plays knight takes d5. The best move for black was knight g4 apparently. And here, white can just give up the bishop because you will take castle and just start throwing all the pawns forward. This is crazy stuff. Now, Hikaru knows he's got to be very careful. He plays knight d5 because he at least knows the next move. White is not going to block in the bishop. And now Hikaru's like, no, Fabi, I really insist. Let's trade the bishops. Hikaru must have thought this is the most prudent approach. Yes, you can put the bishop on g4, but then white is going to move out of the way. And this is not something you would like to do. The computer thinks it's fine. For a human, it's not so simple. So bishop e6, and Fabiano Caruana has emerged from the opening with an advantage. Hikaru played a very, like I said, very prudent, very normal, rational thing. He traded a couple of pieces and said, look, at least without that bishop and without a knight, Fabiano's never going to checkmate me. Fabi plays knight g5, which, by the way, is another further justification of this move. If bishop takes, you, of course, take with the pawn. And in the long run, you have very, very juicy attacking ideas. That's why queen d7 is played, queen g4 is played. And with the inclusion of these two moves, now Hikaru goes for this. And we have h takes g5. This is crazy. This is absolutely wild. Like, Fabiano just played one of the deepest ideas in the Italian. The Italian opening has been played in chess for over 400 years. Like, literally, if you look at chess games recorded from the 1600s, I don't know how they recorded anything back then, frankly. Like, I'm at the point where I'm like, how did anybody know? How have games from the 1600s made it, you know? But they played the Italian, dude. They were playing the Italian even back then. Fabi comes up with this ridiculous idea. And now he has to put the pressure on, right? Hikaru has survived playing against Stockfish. Now, if I ask you here with white, what is the most natural looking move? You would hopefully say castles. I would agree with you. I think Fabi wasn't convinced. I think Fabi looked at this and was like, really? I have to castle here? But what about b5? And you're like, well, whatever. I have my own attack. Yeah, but I'm not so sure. Where is your attack? Well, instead of castling, the best move for white, and Fabi didn't know this ahead of time, is king d2. Because if black attacks you, you never castled. You know what the computer thinks is the best move for white after b5, because you never castled? a4! Counterattacking! That is why you need to leave your rook there. And if black takes, well, great. White actually has another front of attack, and if black plays rook b8, you play b3, and white is better. The king is safe on d2. If Fabiano played king d2 in this position, I don't even know, man. You got to check the glasses. Are they making noise? Are they those glasses I played against the Botes sisters, like the ones that speak? I mean, and he does wear glasses, so, you know, scan them. But Fabi instead plays c3, which is a reasonable move. You know, you have multiple ideas. b5, b4 takes a little bit of sting out. But now Hikaru goes for the very natural advancement a5 and b5. Like, black's play is very easy, and you'll notice Fabi now has to make a decision. Obviously, he's not going to do this, right? Because his position's, well, whatever. That was a mouse slip, but it doesn't really matter. So he has a very difficult situation. Fabi plays all his prep, but he doesn't find the critical idea. The critical idea of this whole position is essentially to put the king on d2. To make this whole thing work by white, to finish off the, you know, the final touches on the painting that Stockfish has drawn here, the AI art, if you will, you have to put the king on d2, otherwise the whole thing doesn't work. Which is crazy, right? So Hikaru plays very, very well. He plays very energetically. He creates counterplay. Right? Center is ripping open, and now Hikaru catches up, and Fabi's king is still in the center. So it's total pandemonium, rook d1, rook d8, and ultimately Hikaru plays very, very well, forcing the game into an endgame where he is not worse. A knight is not as good as a bishop in an endgame, but a knight is equally good, if not better than a bishop, if the bishop has no obvious targets, right? And if the knight is going to be able to gallop into the position. The doubled pawns are very nice, but only if you're attacking. So this h4 idea was insane prep from Fabiano, but ultimately Hikaru survives to tell the tale. But like I told you when you clicked on this video, I'm not done. I'm not done. I have a bonus game for you, which is going to absolutely blow your mind. Ultimately, The boys went down to an endgame. It was still a little bit complicated, but Hikaru played actively, energetically. Some tricks here, the rook is hanging and the knight is hanging, but ultimately rook and 2 pawns, rook and 2 pawns. Losing this would be more impressive than winning it, and the game ends in a draw. I have never in my life seen h4. For Hikaru to deal with this attack as well as he did and play practically and intelligently is very, very, very impressive. But I told you in the beginning, the two would end up playing again because the American Cup is a esports style. So there's a grand final, then there's a winner's final, loser's final, grand final reset. So this game was played like 2 hours ago, right? Fabiano Caruana has the reputation of being one of the best prepared chess players on the planet. Hikaru, though, dude, Hikaru's a problem. Hikaru recently added the most annoying opening in chess to his toolbox. The Catalan. The Catalan is like 3-tank setup back in Overwatch 1. I don't know what on earth the meta is. I quit Overwatch like in 2022. I used to really love Overwatch. I played it like the entire pandemic. I would be on, online, and I would play it with my buddies. And I got up to like almost diamond tank. I just couldn't play that game because you would play and people would be dropping, racial slurs in the voice chat like at 3 in the morning. I just like couldn't play that game, man. It was too much for me. But the 3-tank meta was the modern day equivalent of the Catalan opening. Pawn takes c4, bishop g2, and Fabi plays one of the main lines. There's a lot of lines here with black. He plays a6 and knight c6. And so now, generally, what happens from this point is white plays e3, queen e2, and rook d1. Like, in my experience, that's generally what white is doing. Another approach by white is to put a knight on c3 and to just try to play for a big center. Hikaru plays a sideline. He plays knight bd2. So the point is you're actually just straight up losing the pawn on d4. Knight takes d4 is possible. Now, Hikaru takes what Fabi does, which is play absurd and, absurd level of preparation. And Hikaru says, hey, Fabi, how does it feel when people do to you what you generally do to people? Knight bd2 is a very deep idea. Very deep idea. If the pawn is sacrificed, white can play knight e5, and it's actually very hard for black to make a move. If black plays just developing, you play knight c4, e3 is a problem, the bishop is a problem. It's a very annoying position. Very nasty little position. So Fabiano plays, and there's other ideas as well. Like, I don't know what the most common move is here after knight takes d4. It's actually knight takes c4 even. Knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes d1, rook takes d1. Black is a pawn down, but it's actually not even easy to play. So there's different ideas there. But anyway, b5 is the move that Fabiano chooses. And so here, white targets the pawn. Black advances the pawn because it was targeted. Knight b1, b4, a3, bishop b7. And now we have the point. Hikaru shows the prep on move 11. Most people here take this pawn. Hikaru attacks the knight. I think if we look at the database, no games. I don't see any games here at the top level. Hikaru is now playing Stockfish prep against Fabiano. A lot of ideas here, like getting the knight in the way, but very nice move by Fabi. c2, trying to give up the pawn. If you take, knight takes d4, attacks the queen, so you don't have time to grab the bishop. Okay, easy. Hikaru takes with check, bishop c6, queen c2. Now, if you look at the ensuing position, after the bishop attacks the queen moves, black goes back, white takes, and black takes. You look at this position. How is this real? Literally, the pride and joy of the Catalan is the bishop on g2. And in this opening, you just brutally gave it away. You just gave it away completely. How's that possible? How can this work? Well, white is going to go f3, and then e4, and then develop the bishop and develop the knight. This bishop is terrible. How is black's knight ever going to get in the game with the pawn on f3 and e4? And white is going to use the c file and a file long term because the rook is going to come here. White's got a great position. This is crazy. It's one of the deepest opening ideas in the Catalan I have seen in a minute. This is a problem. This is a problem. Hikaru plays bishop d2. Evidently, I don't know if he was, no, I don't think he was in his prep anymore. Bishop d2. And now Fabi played c5. Now Hikaru had his longest think of the opening. White can play f3 here to try to build up this e4 and block anything like this. White can also play this move rook c1, very interesting move, trying to put pressure on this pawn. Here's one of my favorite potential variations. Rook c1, right, targeting this pawn. Black can play knight e4 attacking the bishop. White goes here and looks to have a great position, right? Great little position here. You know, there are some like moments Black can play h5, which is just so mind-boggling. I don't think you can do it now because you would be losing a pawn. But for example, pawn takes d4, bishop takes d4. Black can even play h5 now. And it's like, how do you survive? You play h4 with white, I can play queen d5. And I mean, you yourself did this to your king. You damaged your own structure, right? So Hikaru plays bishop d2. He plays knight back to d3. It was not the computer stop choice. Fabi threatens mate. Shocking turn of events. Hikaru sees that. And from the opening, we have this position. This is modern day computer stuff. Now, as you can see from the time spend, neither guy particularly comfortable. Fabi spending 20 minutes to come up with the move c5, because obviously not very pleasant. Hikaru played a little bit faster than Fabi, 14 minutes. Didn't find the best move, though. Didn't find the best move. You know, rook c1 might have been better according to the engine, or even there's sometimes rook a4, which is completely, you know, ridiculous, but makes some sense because you're attacking the bishop. But this is the position, and Fabi's going to have to defend this, but you talk about defend. He's a pawn up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so white just has a potential long-term advantage because of the closeness of the knights and the pawn. White is more active, and this bishop is actually quite bad. It's fascinating. How can a bishop just be bad? Bishop's supposed to be a good piece. Not easy to do anything with it. So, rook a4, Hikaru targets the pawn, Fabiano defends it, Hikaru activates the other rook. Fabi has 14 minutes to defend this position. There is no bonus time. Sometimes in chess, on the 40th move, you make it, you get some bonus time. Rook d7, Fabiano's giving up the rook to lose the pawn in the center, and now bishop c6. Okay, now Hikaru is going to try to Magnus Fabiano. That's a verb, to Magnus somebody, okay? That is a word that we are adding to the dictionary. At this point, white is going to try to make some incremental improvements and try to win the game over here. This game for white will be won and lost on the left side of the board. On the right side, you're never going to win a 4-on-4, but you will win a 1-on-1 when the pieces are imbalanced. When the rook is better than the counterpart, this rook I don't even think has made a move yet, right? Knight c4, Fabi plays a5, Hikaru plays king f2, Fabi brings his king, Hikaru goes here, and again, the bishop is just sort of struggling to find a purpose in life. And if the bishop takes on c4, both guys are going to get past pawns. Hikaru doesn't allow that, and Fabi trades like this. But look at that. Hikaru doesn't want symmetry. The bishop is trying to get rid of itself, but Hikaru takes the knight. And now the bishop has to stay on the board. And Hikaru continues to ask questions. All right? Rook d6. He just, you know, e4, king e3, king d4, king c5. Maybe king is going to go all the way to b6. Black goes here. Rook c6. And now white is much better. Why is white much better? Well, if you chase the king, I go rook c5. And again, somehow this idiot is not helping. He has to move, and after knight c4, you straight up lose the pawn. How can that be possible? How can it be possible that the piece that is a long-range sniper, it's supposed to, you know, see the entire board, the bishop from q47, the bishop is just useless in this endgame. It is actually mind-blowing. King f6, and Hikaru's just better if he plays rook c5. And he finds rook c5, and here he goes for e4. I think he didn't like knight c4 right away. I think he probably didn't like that maybe his rook is very passive here, and he was unpleasant with this position. I don't know what he didn't like, but instead of that, he goes e4. He waits. He continues to negate, you know, the bishop's presence, and Fabi's down to 6 minutes. Like, let's see if Hikaru is able to put this away. So we have a4. He's trying to get rid of his weakness. Now, let it be known, if Hikaru does this, he's a complete idiot, and he's not. Okay? You know, maybe I would play that move, but taking on a4 here is a sign of an idiot. And the way that he has played this game, he is the furthest thing from that imaginable. So he is not going to take that pawn. He's going to play b4. Why? Because now the pawn is a pass pawn. So is black's pawn, but it's blockaded. It's not going to go anywhere. This pawn at least will be a problem for the duration of the game. Now Fabi's like, I gotta do something. I have 4 minutes. I need to create counterplay. Am I going to do it with my pawns? Am I gonna... Very instructive, by the way. Very instructive. Counterplay, okay? I'm writing a second book, by the way. I talked about it on my other channel called Gotham 2, and one of the chapters is on intermediate endgames. And rook d8 is basically the picture-perfect example. And so is the king. Active king in the endgame. And here comes Fabi with g5. I mean, at this point, down 2 minutes to 24 against Hikaru, who's on fire, playing a great game. Let's look at Hikaru's technique. He could have went for the pawn. Now that pawn is 3 squares away from queening, and rook takes a4 is on the board. Fabiano's about to be a pawn down. But he is going to try to survive this endgame with counterplay. He goes g4. This is a great move. Trying to undermine the structural support of the white position and potentially create counterplay to infiltrate with the rook and infiltrate with the king. The way that Hikaru will win this position is by playing rook takes pawn, b6, and rook a7. If he is able to take the pawn, get rid of the bishop, and advance his pawn, he's going to make a queen, or black is going to have to give up the bishop for the pawn, and it's going to be rook and knight versus rook. Only thing about endgames is you have to simplify correctly. If every pawn is traded and white is left with rook and knight versus rook, white doesn't win. That's not winnable. White needs at least one more pawn. f4. Fabi e5 on the board. Hikaru locks it up. Not the best move according to the computer. Should have taken on e5, but we have h4. Fabi's doing the best he can do. He has no other way into the white position. Now he does. Hikaru takes on a4. Pawn takes, rook h8. Now what do you do? How are you winning this position? Rook h2 is there, but then the king is going to come up. b6 isn't coming. Knight c4 isn't coming. Knight b1. Knight b1 is Magnesian. I hate to say that. Like, I hate to say Hikaru's winning this game the way Magnus would. Because, like, they're top 2 in the world. You don't really, you would never say Nadal is winning this the way Federer would. Like, they're all the best. They all have it their own way. Knight b1 is a nasty little move. You are trying to kick the king out and get rid of the bishop by trading so that this way you create 2 passed pawns. Check from Fabiano. Hikaru goes back. We have check. The king runs this way. And now Fabi blunders. But why? Why is that a mistake? Now, Fabi could have given a check, but then he probably saw this. Right? And so the real reason this is winning for white, after knight b1 and all this, you want to know the real reason? This is why this position is winning. Rook h2 check, knight t2, rook c2. You're going to win this pawn. Now, if black goes here, bishop takes e4, you're pinned, you lose f5. Terrible. So the reason this is winning for white, sorry, the reason this is not winning for white, why it's a draw, why this works, why this is a draw, is b6. And there's rook takes g3, rook a7, bishop c6. And in some lines, when you play bishop b7, you have rook e3, and the pawn is a problem. The pawn is very, very difficult to actually stop. Rook b8, king g5. Rook g8, king f4, and suddenly you can't move the knight or the king or anything else. So Fabi needed to keep the rook a little bit more active. He goes for the wrong pawn. And now it's over. Now it's over because e4 is no longer under attack. And even though you're going to win g3 guaranteed, now you lose time. Now you lose time. Now I have 2 passed pawns. And the king is too close. You go take my pawn, rook behind the pawn. Rook behind the pawn, game is over. Fabi takes, b6. You cannot go behind the pawn yourself. Rook b4 is coming. Check. The king runs up the board. Fabiano Caruana resigns. Hikaru Nakamura, massive win and a massive survival in one of the most absurd Italians I've ever seen. I've never seen h4 in an Italian. That's crazy. That is literally nuts. And both guys trading high-level engine ideas. For anybody watching this that's an advanced player and wants something to add to their toolbox, knight bd2 in the open Catalan, consider it. This is like 2200 plus if for some reason we have people watching this video. But like, yeah, because normally in the Catalan you play queen c2, queen a4, etc. You play, stuff like knight a3, but, knight c3, e4. But yeah, knight bd2 is awesome. And with this win, Hikaru is now 2804, Magnus is 2837, and they are the only two people in the world rated above 2800. Fabiano is down to number 5 in the world for the first time in like 2 years. Gukesh and Erigaisi are 3 and 4. Yeah, and Hikaru is 1 draw away from winning the American Cup. So there you go. Hikaru fought Stockfish, and he survived. Fabi fought Stockfish, and he didn't. Hikaru played this game in a very, very, very fantastic way. Excellent pressure for him, good time management, and he got it in the end. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.